Yo, what's up friends? Welcome back to my channel, Angel in Tech. Today we're going to be doing an awesome Python project. We're going to be getting the weather forecast using automation. The goals for this project is to get your local weather by web scraping. And then we're only going to be looking at certain attributes from the HTML source. And then we're going to update all that data, upload that data into a CSV file. And from there you can see the local weather for the whole week depending on where you're at. We're going to be using this URL where in the brackets we're going to be inputting our longitude and latitude depending on where you're at. We're going to be using these three libraries, and then we're going to fill in this notebook that I created just to make things a little bit smoother and follow the logic. But if you haven't watched the other videos, I've done some interview questions, small mini Python projects. But with that, let's get started. Subscribe. Cool. So before we begin, I'm going to go over the process that we're going to do, the functions we're going to create. If you don't want to know about it and you just want to see the implementation, go ahead and skip this portion. But we're going to be using three libraries. The request library, which allows us to send HTTP requests using Python. Because we are using a URL, we want to make sure that we can access the data from that web page. So we're going to make sure that our status is 200. Now, if you want to know more about request, I will include a resource where you can learn about it. We're going to be using pandas because we're not going to be doing any data analysis or anything, but we want to upload this data into a CSV file. So I think this is just the easiest way to do it. And then Beautiful Soup, this is the Python library that I use for web scraping. There's other Python libraries that you can use for this, but I think this one's just a little bit easier and allows us to do what we want, and it's very comprehensive. So for the first function, we're just going to get our local longitude and latitude. So if you don't know it, just look it up. It's really easy. You can just Google it. And then we're going to move on to get request and check page status. So because, like I said, we are accessing web pages or even APIs, we want to make sure that the URL is reachable. So this will check the server status and then check if the image URL is working and so on. So we're going to ping the URL, get a response, and then determine if it is working. So goals for this function is make sure our URL from the previous step is accessible. And like I said, we're going to be using this URL. Once it is, if it gives us a 200 status code, then boom, we can move on. So what the web scraping has two parts, and the reason it has two parts because for part one we're going to get the 7-day forecast, and then we're going to do some HTML manipulation using Beautiful Soup, and then for part two we're going to get the weather data for today. Depending on when you're watching this, it's either a couple days back, months back, but you get it. This isn't really necessary for getting the 7-day forecast. This is just if you want to get it for right now and you want to know it, but I think it's good to see how you can access those attributes in the HTML source for today, and then I will also show you how you can access it for the whole week. And then finally we're going to upload our data to the CSV file. The goals, we're going to be using list comprehension, getting the appropriate tags, and then we're going to add all that data, like I said, to a data frame, then the data frame to a CSV file. So if this interests you, go ahead and keep watching. But like I said, there's a lot of different parts to it, and I hope you do understand. I will include resources for you to understand some of the steps, but yeah, let's get to coding. Cool. So now that we're going to start coding, first we want to import all the libraries. We're going to be doing request as our queue, pandas as PD, and then from BS4 we're going to be importing Beautiful Soup that will allow us to web scrape as BSS. And then if for some reason these don't import, we want to see which libraries didn't import. We can run that, and it returns nothing for a successful import, prints nothing, just to make it easier. Cool. So for the first function, we're just going to set self dot. We're going to shorten the latitude and longitude. We're always requiring that for this class to pass in a latitude and longitude. So we can just do self dot lat equals latitude, and self.longe equals longitude. Cool. And this, we can just run that and it won't do anything. And now, okay, we want to make sure that we pass these into the URL to make it accessible. And like I said, we can just copy and paste this URL right here. So let's just copy that because we're going to be using that one. And we can just put it in here. So we're going to be returning it and using an f string to pass in the values self.lat and self.longe into the brackets, like I said earlier, because this will contain the data for your location. So self.lat and self.long. Cool. And we can just do that. And now if we want to see what it prints, we can just do this and run it. Cool. And it prints the URL that we're accessing, and we are accessing Grand Junction, Colorado, which is pretty cool. So here's the 7-day forecast that we want to look at. Now our next function is to check if we can access the URL using code. Yes, we can see that the web page is running, but what if we can't access it using code? So what we're going to do is we're going to be using a try and accept clause, and we're going to be putting our code in there. So first we want to get the URL status. So this get will get the information from the URL right here. Now once we get that, we can check the HTTP status code, and if it's 200, we're going to set the page to our variable page and return it. For some reason, if you get a status code that is not 200, you will get an error, and you will be able to see what error. So let's run this, and then we can uncomment this function and see what it prints. It gives us 200. Awesome. So because it gives us 200, it's going to return the whole HTML page like this. But now in this get weather data for the 7 days, we're going to be using our beautiful soup library to access the contents. So we're going to be using, like I said, our beautiful soup library. So in this self.check URL status.content, so like I said, this returns a page because it gives us a 200 status code. And since right now we have all this, we want to access the content, and we're going to parse everything and set it here to soup. You can name it whatever you want, but it's just easier for you to understand since we're going to be accessing this stuff through the soup library. So now the 7-day forecast, we're going to find the ID inside the HTML content called 7-day forecast, and then we're just going to return that. So the way you understand where this is, so if we want to inspect this right here, we see the tombstones right for each one of these, but we don't want that. We want the forecast for this whole 7 days. So right here we want to access everything within this ID, this div, and that's how we're going to be web scraping all this information. So we want that, and if you want to see how that looks, we can uncomment that out one more time, and it gives us all this right here that we were looking at, all that right here, which is really cool. It's exactly what we want. So it's accessible, and we're going to be getting all this Tuesday information. We're going to be getting the day names, temperature, and all that fun stuff. Okay, so like I said, this is for the 7-day forecast. This single day weather we don't necessarily need, but because I want to show you how to really access all these elements, it's good that we can get this. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna set the 7-day, and we're gonna return, since we're returning the 7-day forecast from here because we found it through our ID over here, we're gonna return it, and we're gonna get all that information. So our first goal is to find all the class tombstone container, and as we see, the tombstone container within this is with right here, all this stuff. And then once we get the tombstone container, it's going to be in a list. So we want to access the first day, which is the current day. For me, it's today. And then we're going to get the period name. The period name, as we saw earlier. So like if we want to look at Tuesday, the period name for that day is today. So we want to set that to period name. And then the short description, we want to get the short description right here, short description, access that as well. And we're going to be using .getText because we want to get the text. We don't want to just get the name, we want to get all this right here. Now there's temperature and image description. Temperature as well, get text. Like I said, we can look at this and get the temperature. Boom. And we're just going to be accessing temp because it'll give us both. And then image description, image title. We go back and we can look at this right here, and it gives us a longer description of what we're doing. And then we're just going to return it in an F string to pass in all our variables that we found. So we can do that. Let's uncomment this so we can see. And it's gonna be longer, which is cool. Boom, boom. Okay, so right here, today, slight chance, T-storms, then more thunderstorms, a high of 75. And then today, longer description, like I said, showers and thunderstorms mainly after 2 p.m. So like I said, right here, this image description, we find the image, but we want the title, and the title gives us a long description, which is really cool. So you can also pass this stuff into a data frame and then into a CSV file. But honestly, I think for you, if you wanted to just get the weather right now, just what day, the temperature, and a short description is all you really need for every day. So now doing this, we're going to be doing the same thing, but we're going to be doing it for every single day of the week. And that can be done like this. Cool. So we're going to set the week forecast again to the weather data that was returned right here. And then we're going to get the tag names. So we're going to select all that. So now doing that, we're going to put all this in the data frame. So we're going to call it days, and we're going to do day.getText for day in tag names. So this tag names contains the day of the week, which is really cool. And we're going to do .getText like we did over here. And then, like I said, we're doing this in list comprehensions just to make this easier. And then we're going to get the short description. For description in week.forecast, select tombstone container. Like I said, it's the same thing as up here, but this time we're doing it for the whole week. So obviously it's going to be in a for loop, because right here in this forecast, it contains the full week, but we're just accessing the current day using 0 to access the first element. And then we're going to do temp.getText for temp in week forecast, select temp, and then the longer description if we want it. So now we can return this weather. And I'll comment these other ones out since we saw those. And we run that. Cool. So now we have days, today, tonight. So the whole day for today for me. Then tomorrow, Tuesday night, Wednesday night, Thursday night, and then Friday. Short description, the temperatures, high and low. And then we have the longer descriptions if you want it. But like I said, you don't need it. It's up to you, depending on how you want to go about the project. And then to write to a CSV file, you do this, weather to CSV. And then rerun it right here, weather CSV. We have it in a CSV file, which is really cool. Yeah, you can also name it whatever you want. You can also import the time library to every time you run this, it tells you what day you ran it, what time it updated. So the next things that you can do with this is create machine learning models to predict weather. You can use the numerical temperatures or the short descriptions and do sentiment analysis on like how the weather is going to be like given certain temperature, or whether or not somebody's going to be mad or gloomy. So there's a lot of things you can do. You can also create your own little application, and people can put in their own URL, pass it in. So kind of like this, you put in your URL, your information, and it gives you the weather data. But if you want to do it for yourself, you can ask people to put in their information, their longitude and latitude, and then do some machine learning and be like, oh, based off this information and based off this temperature, people are more likely to be mad or happy or sad. Up to you on how you want to go about it. But yeah, those are some things that you can do with this data. You can also, if have this running in the background every couple days to update the weather, and using more libraries, you can send this information to your Gmail or to your phone or something that you look at every day and just be like, oh, I wonder what the weather is and what some of the descriptions are. Obviously, yes, we have our applications on our phones, on our watches, and at our fingertips, but this is just some other things that you can practice on your own time. But with that, that's it for this tutorial. I hope you enjoyed it. I hope you learned some things. If you want me to go more in depth about automation, I'm totally cool with that. Just let me know in the comments or at me at IamAngelSH. This notebook will be provided in my GitHub at Angel in Tech. I will also provide a link for that if you want to do it. There will also be a My Binder link if you want to try this on your own as you're watching this tutorial. But yeah, that's it for this video. I hope you guys liked it. Subscribe, like, comment, turn on those notification buttons, and I will see you in the next one. Dream, code, live.